Good evening. Welcome to Millinery and Monsters. My name is Aimee A and I am a Melbourne-based costumier, milliner and maker. Tonight we will be discussing, not now Igor, rubber bats on strings and Vincent Price. The piece we are working on is to be a pointed skull cap with a set of structural bat wings emerging from the top. So first and foremost we will need to block the pointed skull cap with a 2020 brocade fabric onto the dome hat block as seen in our first Dracula's video. Next we will be taking some polymer clay to sculpt out the bat claws for the tops of the wings. They will be then baked off, primed and painted, and following that we will be taking some foam, shaping that and adding in some millinery wire to create the skeleton of the wings itself. Once that is all put together we will then be using a wet look black fabric and then to stretch over for the wing itself. Now the glad wrap is applied to protect the hat block from the glues used. As smooth as you can get this, the better, so that there are no bumps in the blocking process. So give yourself a rough estimation of the size that you would like, not forgetting to add a little extra for when we are shaping. It will pull around a little bit, the shape will distort slightly. So I'm going to keep the bias of the fabric toward the front, so then that will pull down in the peak. And if you do want to double layer this, you can. I do not always find that necessary, but it will add to the strength of the piece, of course. Next we're moving on to the claw of the bat wing. So as you can see, it only needs to be quite small. We do need to make two that match. We will be using a polymer clay. This is Sculpting. There's many other brands. Do not overbake it, it will burn. And from there, once it is baked, we will be using a hobby drill to create a hole that we can thread a wire through later to attach it to the wire structure of the wing. Once that is done, we will then paint and prime it.
As a child watching reruns of the Monsters, I was fascinated by bats. To this day, that fascination remains. Now, whilst the Monsters as a whole is a subject for another time, I simply cannot move forward doting upon rubber rascals without making a mention of Grandpa Munster's pet and dear friend, Igor. Taking up residence in the laboratory underneath the Monster mansion, he was a sensitive soul, flitting about in circles and zooming away from any insult Herman threw his way. Igor was my first example of the wonderfully whimsical world of fake bats on fishing line. I wanted a pet bat just like Igor to flutter about on his string and help me make my potions in my little wooden cubby house, speaking to me in squeaks that only I could understand.
Now that the pieces are baked and primed, what we are going to do is take our hobby drill and make two small holes in the claw around here and here, so that we can thread through a thin wire securing them to the skeleton of the wing here and here. Be very gentle with this. You want to take it slowly because you don't want to risk rushing it and breaking through too quickly onto the other side. Just make sure every so often that you are checking that you are going straight. You don't want to risk breaking through at the wrong point.
I was marginally older by the time I learned movies had misled me, with bats in caves flying into protagonists' hair, causing chaos and shrieks of terror to ripple throughout entire adventuring parties. thus closing the option of one day training them to catch onto my clothes so that I may travel by bat when flying off through the moonlight to take refuge in my castle before the waking of the sun. Ever seeking out these winged wonders, spurred on by a love for the stories of Sherlock Holmes, thank you Chip and Dale, the Rescue Rangers, I discovered a tiny selection of VHS tapes at a small town toy store. What here should catch my eye but Disney's 1986 animated adventure, The Great Mouse Detective. Gleaming in my youthful starry eyes shone Basil of Baker Street, flanked by Professor Rattigan and his right-hand man, Fidget the peg-legged bat. It was in the oily villain Professor Rattigan where I met Vincent Price for the very first time. As I aged, I found myself ever in the presence of Vincent, from guest appearances on The Simpsons, voice work in Thriller, daytime TV features during sick days, features filling my favourite corner of the video store, to what would become one of my most treasured films, Edward Scissorhands. Wherever I would go, so too would Vincent Price.
Next up, what we're going to do is take a piece of foam, and what we're going to do is shape a small amount of this into being basically the stem of the wing. So we want to get it so it has enough body in it that it will hold up the wiring structure when that's stuck down onto the skull cap itself. And my intention for that is basically to make almost like a horn, I suppose, and then we will split that in the middle and put our wires coming out of it. So we want, where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4 wires, which will all be attached to this one part here. So we want to make sure that it's wide enough at the base that it will hold up the structure, basically. What I will be doing to cut this, and this is where I want you to be really careful, as I've said before, lose a finger, I will not bear it on my conscience. This particular part is not so much tricky, but it is fiddly, and there are a couple of ways you can do it. You can either do it very, very slowly with a pair of scissors, or very, very slowly with a very sharp razor. Now, I would highly recommend not doing it with a razor unless you're actually quite comfortable doing so. Ye have been warned. So I'm just going to make sure I keep going back to my reference picture so I can keep in mind what sort of shape I want to end up with. So it's probably going to be like a really small cylindrical pyramid type shape. I think I'm going to have, yeah, like a really tiny little horn come up here for the wires to then branch out of it from here and then separate off on their merry way. And that's essentially there what we're going to be looking at. Just do like a really rough guideline on your foam. This will be cut away basically completely, but it's just sort of to give you an idea. I actually think I'm going to do, this will work out quite nicely. So, as far as size goes, will be about 1/4 of this bottom square each, and then I can round it off. You could also use a very sharp scalpel, or as some people call them, an X-Acto knife. I please request you always do this really slowly and always cutting away from the body. You don't want to slip and then nick yourself accidentally, because you will be very sorry about that. So I just cut little bits at a time. So again, once you cut Barbie's hair, it doesn't grow back. So the idea is that it's going to end up being this shape that leads us into the wing. So what we do want to avoid is any sharp looking edges. We want this to be quite rounded. We don't want this to be a pointy little cube on the bottom. Fine scissors. You end up with quite a lot of excess fluff, but just want to sort of get in there without pulling around too much. And sort of alternate between the two. or whichever you feel more comfortable using. And just remember, you do need to match this up on the second one as well. The good thing about this foam is it's super duper lightweight. So we're looking like this.
Here is where our themes collide. Are you ready? In 1959, ABC International Pictures released a mystery horror film titled The Bat, under the director Crane Wilbur, starring Vincent Price and Agnes Moorehead, whom many of you may know as Endora in the 1964 television series Bewitched. Adaptions from The Circular Staircase, a mystery novel by American writer Mary Roberts Reinhardt, 1908, began in 1920 with a 3-act play by the author herself, first donning the name The Bat. The play would go on to have a multi-year Broadway run and spend 9 months on the West End. Following this came the 1926 American silent film, a comedy mystery of the same name, and then the 1930 film The Bat Whispers, both directed by Ronald West. All this before adapted again, where we pick up in 1959 with our film, which was originally distributed on a double bill with the British Hammer film The Mummy. Our film centres around mystery writer Cornelia Van Gorder, Agnes Moorehead, accompanied by her maid Lizzie Allen. Cornelia has rented a large property in the country named The Oaks from the local bank president John Fleming. The Oaks has seen its share of tragedies, having been the stage for a killer known as the Bat to play out his deadly games in the very recent past. Said to be a man without a face, tearing the throats of his victims with his metal claws. 1 million in negotiable securities has gone missing from the bank, and we quickly learn the ill-fated Fleming is the culprit. Confessing his grand plan to his physician, Dr. Malcolm Wells, played by Vincent Price, Fleming offers to split the money if Dr. Wells will help him fake his own death, threatening to kill him if he refuses. As a forest fire breaks out near the cabin where the two men are staying, Dr. Wells kills Fleming, covering up the murder with the flames. Back at the Oaks, the household staff abandon their positions through their fear of the Bat's return, not before telling Lizzie Allen of rumours that the killer is releasing rabid bats to assist in his slayings. It is not long before Cornelia and Lizzie find themselves alone in the mansion, with the Bat having found his way inside. They phone for help before barricading themselves in Cornelia's room. During the night, the Bat releases a bat into the room through the transom window above the door, striking the fear of rabies into the now bitten Lizzie. It doesn't matter how many times I see this movie, but watching that bat fly so rigidly throughout that room, I can never not let out a laugh of surprise. From here, the mystery unfolds as players fill the mansion, one by one being picked off as the Bat tries to locate the missing million, which we believe to be hidden somewhere in the property. Taking a page from the 1926 rendition, I'm sorry to say I can keep a secret. I won't reveal the identity of the Bat. Future audiences will fully enjoy this mystery if left to find out for themselves. So I shall leave this tale here and you can figure out for yourself who done it. In a 1987 interview, Vincent Price revealed that as a child the stage production had terrified him. He had accepted the role as he thought the filmmakers would revive it and bring it up to date, and admitting he was disappointed with the final result as, quote, "It wasn't a good script." Given that the Bat is now in the public domain, he may have had a point, but please don't let this dissuade you. The Bat is a fun mystery romp with intrigue and ridiculousness. I don't know what Price was thinking. I personally think the line, "Oh, and I suppose that was the cat dropping his dentures," is a hoot.
At last, our batwing headpiece is complete. This is it in all of its glory. Hopefully this has inspired you to make some magic of your own. I hope you enjoyed our tale of rabid bats, murder mansions and intrigue, and if you did, there is plenty more to talk about. So until next time, happy haunting, and I will see you soon with a spooky little story. Bye. Thank you for joining me for tonight's tale of guts and glitter. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe below.